The escape pod drifted in the endless black between star systems. Its metal hull was scarred and dented from 3 years of floating through space debris. Inside the cramped pod, 12-year-old Hana sat curled up against the cold wall, her dark eyes staring at the flickering lights on the control panel. She had been 9 when the raiders attacked her parents' research ship. The memory still haunted her dreams. Her mother pushing her into the escape pod, her father typing frantically at the launch controls as explosions rocked their vessel. The last thing she saw through the small window was fire consuming everything she had ever known. The pod's life support system hummed weakly. It was never meant to keep someone alive for 3 years. The recycling systems groaned and wheezed, barely managing to turn her breath into clean air and her waste into drinkable water. The food supplies had run out 2 years ago, but Hana had learned to survive in ways that should have been impossible. She pressed her small hand against the wall and listened. The metal spoke to her in vibrations and frequency patterns that her young mind had learned to understand. The hull told her about the cosmic radiation outside, about the gravitational pulls of distant stars, about the temperature of the void that surrounded her. Still holding together, she whispered to the wall. Her voice had changed over the years. It carried new tones, new harmonics that seemed to resonate with the ship's systems. The food recycler in the corner hummed louder when she spoke to it. Somehow, impossibly, it had begun producing a thin pace that kept her alive. The machine should have broken down years ago, but Hana sang to it every day, her voice matching its internal frequencies until it responded like a loyal pet. She had taught herself to speak to the stars. During the long, dark hours, she would place her ear against the pod's outer hull and listen to the cosmic background radiation. At first it was just noise, but slowly patterns emerged. The radiation carried information, whispers from distant galaxies, songs from dying stars. The stars were lonely too. Captain Miro stood on the bridge of the Federation patrol vessel Starwind, his blue-scaled hands clasped behind his back. The Valerian officer had served in deep space for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like the readings on his scanner. Sub-Commander Kesh, confirm that signal, he ordered. The younger Valerian, at the sensor station, ran her clawed fingers over the controls. Confirmed, Captain. It's definitely a distress beacon, but the signature is ancient. At least 3 years old. 3 years? Miro's crest flattened against his skull in surprise. Nothing could survive that long in an escape pod. The beacon is definitely human in origin, Kesh reported. But Captain, there's something strange about the energy readings. The pod system should be completely dead by now, but I'm detecting active life support. Miro considered this. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as a young species from a small blue planet called Earth. They were tough and adaptable, but even humans had limits. No one could survive 3 years in a basic escape pod. Set intercept course, he ordered. We have to investigate. The Starwind changed direction, its quantum drives pushing it toward the distant pod. As they drew closer, the strange readings became even more puzzling. Captain, called Chief Medical Officer Nara from her station. The tall, green-skinned Altarian's multiple eyes were wide with confusion. I'm detecting a single life form aboard that pod. Heart rate, brain activity, everything normal for a human child. Impossible, Miro muttered. There's more, sir. The pod's quantum signature is fluctuating in patterns I've never seen. It's almost like it's communicating with something. Within an hour, the Starwind had the small pod secured in its docking bay. The Federation crew gathered around the battered escape vessel, their various species united in curiosity and concern. Life signs are definitely human, Nara confirmed, as she ran her medical scanner over the pod. Female, approximately 12 years old. But Captain, her neural activity is off the charts. I've never seen brain patterns like this. Miro nodded to his security team. Open it up. The pod's hatch hissed open with a rush of stale air. Inside, Hana blinked in the sudden bright light of the docking bay. She was small and thin, her black hair long and tangled, her clothes patched and repaired countless times. But her eyes were alert and intelligent. She looked up at the gathering of alien faces and spoke in perfect galactic standard. Thank you for finding me. I knew you would come. The Federation crew exchanged glances. Most humans struggled with galactic standard even as adults. Child, Miro said gently, kneeling down to her level. What is your name? How did you survive out there for so long? My name is Hana, she said, her voice carrying those strange harmonics that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. I survived because the ship taught me how. She placed her hand on the pod's interior wall, and something impossible happened. The dying systems flickered to life. Lights that had been dark for months began to glow. The recycling units hummed with renewed energy. I learned to speak to it, Hana continued, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Everything has a voice if you know how to listen. The metal sings about stress and fatigue. The quantum cores whisper about energy patterns. The stars tell stories about time and space. She tilted her head and made a sound that was part whistle, part hum, part something else entirely. The Starwind's own systems responded. Lights throughout. The docking bay pulsed in rhythm with her voice. By the void, whispered Chief Engineer June, a stocky human from one of the outer colonies. She's interfacing directly with our quantum grid. Hana smiled at him. Your ship is happy. It's been lonely in deep space. Most crews don't talk to their ships properly. She stood up slowly, her legs shaky from years of zero gravity. The stars told me you would come. They said the galaxy was getting ready for something big, something dangerous. They said I needed to be ready too. Miro felt a chill run down his spine. What did the stars tell you, child? Hana's expression grew serious beyond her years. They said the Silent Ones are coming back, and this time, they mean to finish what they started long ago. The Federation crew stood in stunned silence as they realized they had found something far more significant than a lost child. They had discovered a human girl who could speak the language of the universe itself, and according to her, the galaxy was running out of time. Chief Medical Officer Nara had examined thousands of different species during her career, but nothing had prepared her for Hana. The human child sat patiently on the medical bed while Nara ran scan after scan, each result more puzzling than the last. This cannot be right, Nara muttered, checking her equipment for the third time. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she studied the readings. Captain Miro, you need to see this. Captain Miro entered the medical bay, his blue scales shifting, color with concern. What did you find, Doctor? Her neural pathways have grown in ways that should be impossible, Nara explained, pointing to the brain scan displayed on her screen. Look at these patterns, they're not just organic tissue anymore. There are crystalline structures integrated with her neurons, almost like living quantum processors. Hana swung her legs from the examination table, watching the 2 adults with calm interest. The cold space changed me, she said simply. When the food ran out, I had to learn new ways to get energy. The cosmic radiation taught my body how to adapt. Cosmic radiation is deadly to most species, Miro said carefully. It should have killed you within days. It tried to, Hana admitted. But I started listening to it instead of fighting it. Everything in space has patterns, rhythms. Once I learned to match those rhythms, the radiation became like food for my brain. Nara ran another scan, focusing on Hana's vocal cords. The results made her step back in shock. Captain, her throat has developed entirely new structures. She can produce frequencies that no organic being should be able to make, let alone survive creating. As if to demonstrate, Hana made a low humming sound. The medical equipment around her began to resonate, their displays brightening and their functions smoothing out. A broken scanner that had been giving faulty readings for weeks suddenly started working perfectly. How are you doing that? Nara asked, her scientific mind racing. I'm singing to them, Hana explained. Every machine has a frequency that makes it happy. When they're happy, they work better. Commander Tyke, the ship's science officer, had been monitoring the conversation from the bridge. The tall, thin Centaurian rushed into the medical bay with a portable quantum field detector in his hands. Doctor, Captain, you have to see this, he said breathlessly. While she was humming, every quantum field generator on this ship synchronized. Our engines are running at 112% efficiency. That's theoretically impossible, Hana looked at Tyke with interest. Your ship's quantum core is lonely. It's been working hard for years without anyone really understanding what it needs. I just told it that someone appreciates its work. Tyke stared at her. You can communicate directly with quantum fields? Not just communicate, Hana said. I can feel them. Each quantum particle has its own tiny song. When billions of them work together, they make beautiful music. Most people can't hear it because they're not listening with the right part of their mind. She stood up and walked to the wall, placing her small hand against the metal surface. This wall is singing about the gravitational stress from the nearby star system. The artificial gravity generators are working harder than they need to, because they're not aligned with the natural gravity we're traveling through. Commander Tyke quickly checked his instruments. She's right. Gravity stress is elevated in Section 7, exactly where she's touching the wall. How could she possibly know that? The metal told me, Hana said matter-of-factly. Everything talks if you know how to listen. The hard part is learning so many different languages. Over the next several hours, Hana demonstrated abilities that challenged everything the Federation crew knew about physics and biology. She could predict system failures before the ship's computers detected them. She could sense gravitational anomalies from light years away. Most remarkably, she could repair damaged equipment simply by singing to it. Chief Engineer June was the most skeptical member of the crew, but even he became a believer when Hana fixed a quantum coupling that had been malfunctioning for months. She simply placed her hands on the device and hummed a complex melody that seemed to have mathematical precision. The coupling wasn't broken, she explained, as the device began working perfectly. It was sad. The quantum particles inside were out of harmony with each other. I just sang them a song to help them remember how to dance together. This is unprecedented, Commander Tyke told Captain Miro privately. According to Federation records, humans are a young species with basic technology. They're known for being tough and adaptable, but this girl represents an evolutionary leap that shouldn't be possible. What are you saying? Miro asked. I'm saying she's not just human anymore. She's become something new, a bridge between organic consciousness and the fundamental forces of the universe. Meanwhile, Hana had wandered to the ship's main viewport, staring out at the stars with an expression that seemed far too old for her 12 years. Nara found her there, gazing into the cosmic void. Do you miss your parents? The doctor asked gently. Every day, Hana replied softly. But they're not really gone. Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. They became part of the cosmic background radiation when their ship exploded. Sometimes, when I listen very carefully to the space between stars, I can still hear their voices. She turned to look at Nara with eyes that held depths of knowledge no child should possess. That's how I learned about the Silent Ones. My parents' energy patterns carried warnings. They discovered something terrible before they died. What kind of warnings? Nara asked. The raiders who attacked us weren't random pirates. They were scouts, preparing the way for something much worse. The Silent Ones have been sleeping in the dark spaces between galaxies for millions of years, but now they're waking up. Hana's voice took on those strange harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. They're coming to clean the galaxy of what they call contamination. Young species like humans, species that grow and change and create new things. The Silent Ones think we're chaos that needs to be removed. She looked back at the stars. The cosmic background radiation carries their whispers now. They're already moving, traveling through dark matter streams toward our galaxy. The Federation doesn't have much time. How much time? Nara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. The stars say maybe 2 months before their advanced scouts arrive, 6 months before the main force gets here. Hana's young face was grave with responsibility. That's why the universe taught me how to speak its language. Someone needs to be ready to talk to them when they come. Talk to them, or sing to them, Hana said with a sad smile. Even ancient beings respond to the right frequency. The question is whether I can learn their language in time, and whether they'll listen to a human child who learned to speak with stars. As the Starwind continued its journey toward Federation headquarters, carrying its impossible passenger, Hana stood at the viewport and began to practice. Her voice rose in complex harmonies that resonated through the ship's hull and out into space itself, carrying a message of hope into the cosmic void. The universe was listening, and somewhere, in the darkness between galaxies, ancient minds began to take notice of the small human child who dared to sing to the stars. The Starwind had been traveling toward Federation headquarters for 2 weeks when Hana made her first major prediction. She was in the ship's main corridor, her hand pressed against the wall, when she suddenly went very still. "Captain Miro," she called out, her voice carrying that strange harmonic quality that made everyone stop what they were doing. "You need to change course. There's a gravitational storm forming 3 light-years ahead of us." Commander Tyke checked his long-range sensors from the bridge. "Negative readings, Captain. Space is clear for the next 10 light-years." But Captain Miro had learned to trust the impossible child. "Change course, Commander. Take us around the area," Hana indicated. "Sir, that will add 4 days to our journey," Tyke protested. "Do it anyway." 3 days later, Federation Emergency Services sent out warnings about a massive gravitational anomaly that had suddenly appeared exactly where Hana said it would be. The storm was powerful enough to tear apart any ship caught in its path. "How? Did you know?" Chief Engineer June asked Hana as they sat in the ship's small dining area. "Our best sensors couldn't detect anything." Hana stirred her soup thoughtfully. The ship's food processors had begun making better meals ever since she started humming to them. "The fabric of space-time has memory," she explained. "When large masses move through the universe, they leave traces. I can hear the echoes of what's going to happen before it actually occurs." She paused, listening to something only she could hear. "There's another storm forming near the Rigel system. It won't hit for 6 days, but the trade ships there should be warned." Captain Miro immediately sent a message to Federation Command. By now, several high-ranking officials were paying attention to reports about the strange human child who could predict space phenomena. But Hana's abilities were growing, stronger each day and more complex. She began spending hours in the ship's engine room, singing to the quantum drives in harmonies that improved their efficiency by incredible amounts. "The quantum particles are happy," she told Engineer June, as they watched the energy readings climb to record levels. "They've been forced to work in patterns that fight against their natural frequencies. When I sing to them, they remember how to flow properly." June shook his head in amazement. "These engines are running at efficiency levels that should be impossible. If the Federation could understand how you do this, it would revolutionize space travel." "It's not really that complicated," Hana said. "Everything in the universe wants to be in harmony. Stars, planets, atoms, even thoughts. The problem is that most people have forgotten how to listen for the natural rhythms." That night, as the ship traveled through a particularly dark section of space, Hana stood at the main viewport and began to sing a song unlike anything the crew had heard before. Her voice rose and fell in complex patterns that seemed to reach beyond the ship itself. Medical Officer Nara found her there, her 4 eyes reflecting the starlight. "What are you singing about?" "I'm talking to the planets," Hana said softly. "There's a world about 2 light-years from here. It's trying to tell someone that its star is getting sick. The star will go supernova in about 300 years, but there are people living on that planet who don't know. You can hear planets from that distance. Planets are very loud once you learn their language. They sing about their weather, their geology, the life forms living on their surface. This one is worried about its people." Hana's expression grew more serious. "But that's not the most important thing I'm hearing. The silent ones are getting closer. Their scout ships have entered the outer rim of our galaxy." She turned to face Nara, her young face showing wisdom beyond her years. "They're not like us. They don't communicate with sounds or electromagnetic signals. They speak through direct manipulation of space-time itself. Their language is gravity waves and quantum fluctuations. Can you understand them? I'm learning. It's the hardest language I've ever tried to learn because it's so old and so different from life-based communication, but I'm starting to pick up some of their concepts." Hana returned her attention to the stars. "They call themselves the Gardeners. They believe the universe should be clean and orderly, with only the oldest and most stable forms of consciousness allowed to exist. They see young species like humans as weeds that grow too fast and create too much chaos. What do they plan to do? They want to prune the galaxy, remove all the young civilizations and let only the ancient ones remain. They've done it before, millions of years ago. But this time might be different. Why? Hana smiled, and for a moment, she looked like the child she really was. Because this time there's someone who can speak their language, someone who can try to explain why chaos and growth aren't always bad things. Over the following days, Hana spent more and more time practicing what she called deep space communication. She would place her hands on the ship's hull and project her consciousness outward, listening to the cosmic background radiation and the gravitational songs of distant stars. Commander Tayek monitored these sessions with growing amazement. Her brain activity during these periods is off the charts, he reported to Captain Miro. She's somehow accessing quantum information fields that we can barely detect with our best equipment. Is it dangerous for her? I don't think so. If anything, she seems to be getting stronger. Her neural pathways are becoming more complex, more integrated with quantum structures. She's evolving in real time. During one of these deep communication sessions, Hana suddenly gasped and opened her eyes. "Captain," she called out urgently, "we need to get to Federation headquarters as fast as possible. The Silent Ones just sent a message to the Galactic Core." "What kind of message?" "An ultimatum. They're giving all young species 30 days to cease expansion and begin what they call voluntary extinction. After that, they'll begin forced pruning operations." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 30 days to save every young civilization in the galaxy. "There's more," Hana continued, her voice steady despite the terrible news. "They're aware of me now. They know there's a human who can understand their communications. They're curious about what I might have to say." She stood up, her small form somehow radiating determination. "I need to learn their full language before we reach Federation space. It might be the only chance to negotiate with them." "You're just a child," Nara said gently. "This is too much responsibility for someone your age." Hana looked at her with those eyes that held the depth of space itself. "I stopped being just a child when I learned to hear the songs of dying stars. The universe chose me for this, Doctor. I have to try." For the rest of the journey, Hana immersed herself completely in learning the language of the Silent Ones. She sang to gravitational fields, whispered to quantum particles, and listened to the deep structures of space-time itself. The dear crew watched in awe and growing concern as she pushed her abilities further than ever before. Her voice began to carry frequencies that made reality itself seem to bend around her. When she practiced certain phrases in the Silent One's language, the ship's sensors detected ripples in the fabric of space. She's not just learning their language, Tyke realized. She's becoming capable of speaking it with the same force they do. She's learning to manipulate space-time through pure consciousness. As Federation headquarters finally came into view, Hana stood at the viewport 1, last time before everything changed. Her reflection in the transparent metal showed a 12-year-old girl, but her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had touched the fundamental forces of creation itself. "The Silent Ones are 3 days away from the outer colonies," she announced, quietly. "When we reach the station, the real work begins. I need to convince beings older than our sun that chaos and growth aren't diseases to be cured." She placed her hand on the viewport, and for just a moment, every star visible through the transparent material seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. "The universe is counting on us," she whispered to the cosmos. "I won't let it down." Federation headquarters orbited the neutral planet Harmony, a massive space station that housed representatives from over 300 different species. As the Starwind docked, Hana could feel the tension in the station's quantum fields. Fear and uncertainty radiated through the metal corridors like a poison. The Federation Council had called an emergency session. Species that had been enemies for centuries sat together in the Great Assembly Hall, united by the threat of the Silent Ones. Hana walked between Captain Miro and Medical Officer Nara, her small form dwarfed by the towering alien delegates. Chancellor Yirok of the Altarian Republic stood at the central podium, his green skin pale with stress. "Fellow beings, we face an extinction-level threat. Our deep space monitors have confirmed the approach of vessels using technology beyond our understanding. Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembly. Some delegates called for immediate military mobilization. Others suggested evacuation to distant galaxies. A few whispered about surrender. However, Chancellor Yirok continued, "We may have found an unexpected advantage. The human child you see before you claims she can communicate with these beings." All eyes turned to Hana. She felt the weight of hundreds of different gazes, some hopeful, others suspicious. A tall, blue-skinned Rigelian delegate stood up. "You would trust the fate of the galaxy to a human child? The humans are barely out of their home system. What could they possibly understand about ancient cosmic forces?" Admiral Wu of the Human Colonial Forces rose from his seat. The older human's face was weathered from years of deep space service. "With respect, Delegate Karen, this child has demonstrated abilities that our best scientists cannot explain. Perhaps we should listen to what she has to say. Or perhaps," said Counselor Vex of the Draconian Empire, her reptilian features twisted with contempt, "she is exactly what these silent ones are trying to eliminate. Primitive chaos given form." Hana stepped forward, her young voice somehow carrying clearly through the vast assembly hall without amplification. "May I speak?" Chancellor Yirok nodded. "The floor is yours, child." Hana walked to the center of the hall, surrounded by beings who could crush her without effort. But when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the station's quantum cores resonate in sympathy. 3 years ago, I was just a normal human girl. I liked drawing pictures and reading stories about space exploration. Then raiders destroyed my family's ship, and I was left alone in the dark between stars. She paused, and in that silence every being in the hall could feel the weight of that solitude. I should have died. The cold should have killed me, or the radiation, or simple starvation. But instead I learned to listen. First to my escape pod, then to the cosmic background radiation, then to the songs of distant stars. As she spoke, the lights in the assembly hall began to pulse gently in rhythm with her words. The environmental systems hummed with improved efficiency. The universe isn't silent. It's full of voices, songs, conversations that have been going on since the first stars were born. Most of us just don't know how to hear them. Delegate Karen interrupted harshly. "Pretty words, child, but can you actually communicate with these silent ones?" "Yes," Hana said simply. "I've been learning their language for weeks. They call themselves the Gardeners. And they're not evil. They're afraid." Shocked murmurs filled the hall. The idea that ancient cosmic beings could feel fear seemed impossible to most delegates. "They've watched the universe for millions of years," Hana continued. "They've seen young species rise and fall, seen civilizations destroy themselves and others through war, pollution, and reckless expansion. They decided long ago that the only way to preserve order was to prevent chaos from spreading." She looked up at the assembly with eyes that held depths of understanding. "But they're wrong about us. Yes, young species can be chaotic and destructive, but we're also creative and adaptive and full of hope. We grow and change and discover new possibilities." "Counselor," Vex snorted derisively, "how can you possibly convince ancient beings to change minds they've held for eons?" "By showing them what they've forgotten," Hana replied. "They've lived so long that they've forgotten what it feels like to discover something new, to create something that never existed before. I can remind them." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as the station's quantum sensors detected massive distortions in space-time. "They're here," Hana said quietly, but somehow everyone heard her over the noise. On the main display screen, impossible shapes materialized in the space around the station. The Silent One's ships seemed to exist partially outside normal reality, their surfaces shifting between dimensions. They were beautiful and terrible, like geometric poems written in dark matter and folded space. "All defensive fleets to battle stations," Admiral Wu commanded, his military training taking over. "No," Hana said, her voice cutting through the panic. "Fighting them would be like insects attacking the sun. We need to talk." She walked to the assembly hall's central communication array and placed her hands on the quantum transmission nodes. I need to link this system to the station's main quantum core. I have to broadcast on frequencies they can understand. Child, those systems could kill you, Chief Technician Bora warned. The power levels required for quantum field communication are beyond what organic beings can survive. I'm not entirely organic anymore, Hana replied calmly. The years in space changed me. I can handle it. Before anyone could stop her, she activated the link. Energy coursed through her small body as she connected her consciousness to the station's most powerful communications array. Her voice, when she spoke, carried across subspace itself. She didn't speak in words, but in gravitational harmonics and quantum fluctuations. Her message rippled through the fabric of space-time, reaching the Silent One's vessels in their own ancient language. The response came as a pressure that made reality itself seem to bend. When the Silent Ones spoke, their words arrived as distortions, in gravity and time that the station's computers could barely process. But Hana understood. She listened to their ultimatum, delivered in concepts that predated most stellar systems. They offered the galaxy's young species a choice: voluntary extinction within 7 days, or forced removal by technologies that could unravel the atomic bonds holding matter together. Why? Hana asked in their mathematical language of spacetime, manipulation. Why do you fear us so much? The answer came as a cascade of images and concepts transmitted directly into her consciousness. She saw the history of the galaxy from their perspective. Young species rising to brief prominence before destroying themselves in wars that left entire systems dead. Civilizations that poisoned their worlds and then spread that poison to the stars. Chaos multiplying until it threatened the very stability of spacetime itself. But we're not all like that, Hana responded, her message carrying harmonics of hope and determination. Some of us learn. Some of us grow beyond our destructive nature. Some of us become gardeners too, helping instead of hurting. She opened her mind completely, sharing her memories through quantum entanglement. The Silent Ones experienced her 3 years of solitude, her gradual awakening to the songs of the cosmos, her growing understanding that consciousness and chaos could coexist with order and stability. For long moments, space around the station seemed frozen as ancient minds processed concepts they had not considered for eons. The Silent Ones conferred among themselves in gravitational whispers that made nearby stars flicker. Finally, they responded, not with words, but with a test. Reality twisted around the station as the Silent Ones created a pocket dimension, a space, where the laws of physics could be rewritten at will. Inside this bubble of controlled chaos, they began to manifest their greatest fear: uncontrolled growth and change. Systems failed randomly. Energy flowed in impossible directions. The careful order of the station dissolved into entropy and madness. Show us, their message resonated through dimensions, how consciousness can bring order from chaos without destroying the potential for growth. Hana smiled, despite the terror radiating from the delegates around her. This was what she had been preparing for during those long years between the stars. She began to sing. Hana's song began as a whisper, barely audible above the chaos consuming the station. But as her voice grew stronger, something extraordinary happened. The random failures and impossible physics around them began to respond to her melody. She wasn't fighting the chaos. Instead, she was finding patterns within it, mathematical relationships that connected the disorder to deeper harmonies. Her voice carried frequencies that resonated with the fundamental forces holding reality together. The delegates watched in amazement as systems began to stabilize around Hana's song. But she wasn't simply restoring order. She was creating something new, something that had never existed before. A perfect balance between structure and creativity, between stability and growth. Listen, she sang to the Silent Ones in their language of gravitational waves and quantum mathematics. This is what young consciousness can do. We don't just create chaos. We find new ways to make order and change work together. As her song expanded, it began to incorporate voices from throughout the station. The quantum cores hummed in harmony with her melody. The environmental systems added their own rhythmic patterns. Even the artificial gravity generators began to pulse in sync with her breathing. But then something even more remarkable occurred. The song spread beyond the station itself. Captain Miro felt it first aboard the Starwind, still docked in the station's bay. The ship's quantum drives began resonating with frequencies that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Chief Engineer Jun watched in wonder as every system on the ship synchronized with perfect efficiency. "It's not just our ship," he reported to the bridge. "I'm detecting similar harmonics from every vessel in the fleet." The phenomenon continued to expand. Across the Harmony system, ships of dozens of different species found their systems spontaneously improving. Quantum drives that had been struggling began running smoothly. Communication arrays that had been providing static suddenly cleared up completely. Medical Officer Nara monitored Hana's vital signs as the girl continued her impossible song. "Her neural activity has exceeded our ability to measure it," she reported to Admiral Wu. "She's not just connecting with local systems anymore. She's somehow linking with quantum fields across multiple star systems. Through the station's sensors, they could see the Silent One's reaction. The ancient beings' ships had stopped their dimensional shifting. For the first time in millions of years, they were completely still, listening to something they had never encountered before. Hana's song now carried voices from across the galaxy. Every conscious being who chose to listen found they could add their own frequency to the growing symphony. Humans with their adaptability and hope, Altarians with their mathematical precision, Valerians with their deep understanding of time, Draconians with their fierce loyalty to those they protected. Even species that had been enemies for centuries discovered they could harmonize when they focused on what they shared rather than what divided them. The Silent Ones began to remember. In wise, their ancient memories buried beneath eons of careful order and control, they found echoes of their own youth. There had been a time when they too had been explorers, creators, dreamers who looked at the universe and saw infinite possibilities rather than dangers to be controlled. "We had forgotten." Their response rippled through dimensions, carrying harmonics of wonder that their species had not expressed for millions of years. "We had forgotten what it meant to grow, to change, to become something new." Hana's song shifted, incorporating the Silent One's own ancient melodies. She showed them how their desire for order could coexist with younger species' drive for growth, how stability and chaos could dance together instead of fighting. "The universe is not a garden to be pruned," she sang in mathematics and gravity waves. "It's a symphony waiting to be completed. Every voice matters. Every note has its place." The pocket dimension around the station began to change. Instead of random chaos, it became a space where new forms of order could emerge naturally. The delegates watched as impossible technologies materialized around them, devices that seemed to grow organically from the interaction between consciousness and quantum fields. Chancellor Yirok stared at a crystalline structure that had formed near his seat. When he touched it, knowledge flowed into his mind. Principles of engineering that could build ships capable of traveling between dimensions, medical techniques that could heal injuries by singing to damaged cells, communication, methods that could connect minds across galactic distances. "This is what cooperation can create," Hana explained, her voice now carrying harmonics from thousands of different species. "When young creativity meets ancient wisdom, when chaos learns to dance with order, the universe itself becomes more than it was before." The Silent One's response came as a transformation. Their ships began to change, shedding the cold, geometric perfection they had maintained for eons. New structures grew from their hulls, organic curves that complemented their mathematical angles. They were becoming something they had never been before, gardeners who helped things grow instead of cutting them down. "We offer a new compact," their message resonated through space and time. "Let the young species continue to grow and explore and create. But let them learn from our experience. Let them understand that growth without wisdom leads to destruction. And let you remember," Hana replied, "that wisdom without growth leads to death. The universe needs both of us." As the pocket dimension dissolved, Returning normal physics to the station, Hana collapsed. The effort of conducting a symphony that spanned multiple galaxies had pushed even her enhanced abilities to their limits. Medical Officer Nara caught her as she fell. "Are you all right, child?" Hana looked up with eyes that now held flecks of starlight. "I'm not a child anymore," she said softly. "The universe chose me to be its translator. That changes you." She was right. The girl who had been found in a drifting escape pod was gone, replaced by something new. Humanity's first stellar speaker, a bridge between the young chaos of emerging consciousness and the ancient order of cosmic forces. Over the following months, the galaxy began to change in ways no one had imagined possible. The Silent Ones shared technologies that had been developed over millions of years, but only with species that demonstrated they could use them responsibly. Young civilizations gained access to wisdom that helped them avoid the mistakes that had destroyed countless others. But perhaps more importantly, the ancient beings remembered what it meant to wonder, to hope, to see the universe as a place of infinite possibilities rather than infinite dangers. Hana established the Academy of Cosmic Languages on Earth, where beings from across the galaxy came to learn the songs of stars and planets. She taught them that consciousness was not separate from the universe, but part of its fundamental structure. Her first students included former enemies who had discovered they could harmonize when they focused on creation rather than destruction. The curriculum covered everything from quantum engineering sung in mathematical frequencies to medical techniques that healed through harmonic resonance. "Every consciousness in the universe adds a unique voice to the cosmic symphony," she told her diverse classes. "The goal is not to make everyone sound the same, but to help each voice find its perfect place in the greater song." Years later, when Hana had grown into her role as humanity's ambassador to the cosmos, she would sometimes return to that small escape pod, now preserved as a monument to the power of adaptation and hope. She would place her hand on its scarred hull and remember the frightened 9-year-old girl who had first learned to listen to the songs of dying stars. The pod still carried traces of those lonely years in space, quantum echoes of the moment when a human child chose to embrace the unknown rather than surrender to despair. It had become a shrine visited by beings from across the galaxy, a reminder that consciousness could find a way to grow even in the darkest, coldest places. "The universe is not empty space filled with matter," Hana would tell visitors to the monument. "It's an ocean of consciousness, and every thinking being is a note in an eternal symphony. The music never ends. It just keeps getting more beautiful as new voices join in." And throughout the galaxy, on worlds that had once faced extinction at the hands of the Silent Ones, children of dozens of different species would look up at the stars and listen for the songs that connected all consciousness across the cosmic void. They could hear it now, thanks to a human girl who had learned to speak the language of stars. The universe was singing, and every voice mattered in its infinite song.